the Tish'a B'Av experience is going through this process of the mourning, of not having the temple, but it's such a foreign concept that it requires a lot of discussion, it requires a lot of dialogue. Hopefully this is dialogue that we're all having with ourselves, with our peers, with our rabbis, but we're going to bring the dialogue to you a little bit today. So we're going to jump in with these questions. These are questions that we've received in the past, but please feel free at any point to ask questions in order to enhance, for everyone's sake, the learning. Okay? So our first question we're going to begin with. How can one truly connect to mourning the Beis Hamikdash when we don't even really know what it is, what it was like, even when we did have it? So how are we supposed to connect to it? Rabbi Eade, why don't you begin? Rabbi Gil, Shlita, excuse me.
This question, I think, shows us what Tish'a B'Av is all about, the 9th of Av. The fact that we don't know what it was, the Beis Hamikdash, what we're missing, the fact that we have to spend time explaining and trying to relate to the Beis Hamikdash. I remember there was a student once, I forgot his name. He came from the newly freed USSR. And we asked him to speak because in the old days we had different people speaking about the parts of the world that they came from, how's the Jewish community there. Very, very interesting. And he says, you know what, I can't really tell you anything because I am so empty of Judaism. It's been stripped from me. I don't know anything about it. You tell me today's Tish'a B'Av, I believe you, but I don't know what it is. And he concluded by saying that is the sign of Tish'a B'Av. The fact that a Jew can live now and not be aware what it was, what we're missing, that's Tish'a B'Av. So I think the question is very, very, very well taken. But I'm not giving you an answer yet. The fact of the matter is that Jewish life, when we had a temple, was so different that it's very, very difficult to put into words. It's like comparing or contrasting two totally different realities. When we had the Beis Hamikdash, when we had the Holy Temple, the presence of the Almighty, whatever that means, I'll let other people explain that, but the presence of the Almighty was something that was very, what's the word in English, palpable, tangible, very real. A person could go into the Beis Hamikdash and experience a unity with the Almighty as in no other place. And this had a ripple effect. It affected the entire society, the Beis Hamikdash. When the prophets came and they said that the temple is going to be destroyed, people said, that's heresy. How could that cannot be. The Almighty is so close to us. He's within us. His presence is with us. It can't possibly happen. And unfortunately, it did happen. And why did it happen? Because we strayed from that awareness. We lost that awareness. So now we have to try to recreate it. We have to try to relate to it through the Ken Spiro's history presentation, through the tefillot, through the that special keynote, special poems that we say, dirges, that we say on Tish'a B'Av, trying to relate to it. Special, the Gemara devotes several very jam-packed pages about the Churban, and not only in one place, in other places as well. For sure, it was a very, very major theme, and that's our job, to try to relate to it. Okay, I'll let
The Gemara teaches a very powerful thing, which is that every single generation that the Beis Hamikdash is not built, I hope by the time we just open the curtain a little bit, we're going to see it there. But if God forbid it's not, it means that in that very generation it's being destroyed. Which means it's not something that happened in the past. Now it's also something that happened in the past, obviously. But the reason why it's not here is we're still doing the same things that would cause a Beis Hamikdash to be destroyed. So what is that? The Beis Hamikdash is a place, like Rabbi Gil said so beautifully, of unification and relationship, of intimate connection to God, intimate connection to all parts of life in a healthy way. It's the place where heaven and earth kiss. We can imagine what that means. Where heaven meets this world. It's not even here, so to speak. It's a place that's beyond, but here. And we're taught that what removed that intimacy was saying hateful things to other people. Which means if we're still acting this out, we're still saying hurtful, hateful things, which is very relatable, and even if it's not so hateful, but maybe I don't always think the best of that guy, I don't have the nicest feelings about that person, I don't see that person the nicest way, I'm pushing away the opportunity for that relationship. So maybe that's a way to just internalize it, that all of the mess in the world today is because we don't have a Beis Hamikdash, and all that mess is just lack of relationship, real, intimate, positive relationship between us and Hashem, us and our fellow, and us and ourselves. And we have to look inside now, which is something very relatable. Am I being a bit hurtful to somebody else? Am I seeing people in the nicest way possible? So begin with looking inwards over the next couple of days and say to oneself, am I being as nice to that person? Do I have a grudge with that person? Is there like a family member, God forbid, that I haven't spoken to like in a while? Why are you guys fighting? We don't even know anymore, but we're fighting. Maybe it would be better to just make peace. If there's anything in that category, use this time now to look inwards and try to heal that.
Can you just repeat the question? Sorry.
Sure.
I was listening so intently to...
How are we meant to truly connect to mourning the Beis Hamikdash when we have no clue what it was or what it was like to actually experience it?
Right, so Jerusalem is called a lot of things throughout the Tanakh and in the words of our sages. One of the things that it's called is, I believe it's called Tabur Haaretz, right? Tabur Haaretz, one loose translation of that is the belly button of the world. Why is Jerusalem called the belly button of the world? It's like a strange name, the pupik of the world, yeah? It's like silly, but in reality, there's a lot of reasons why. There's many layers of depth to this. Number one, quite obviously, just as the belly button is in the middle of one's body, so Jerusalem is in the middle of the whole world. And a person is called an olam katan. The person is called a little mini world, a little mini universe. And so we are right now the apex of creation, and this world is the universe in a nutshell, right? And Jerusalem's at the center of it all, in the middle of the Middle East. That's the simplest understanding. In Russian, we have a funny statement that when a little kid, gets a boo-boo, so one of the ways we try to make them feel better is we say, does anyone know? No, do svadьбе zаживет. Confirmation, yeah? Do svadьбе zаживет? Yeah, that means by your wedding day, so it'll heal. Don't worry, it's some form of consolation. Funny thing about the belly button is that the belly button's a scar on your body that doesn't heal, right? And so I think our sages were alluding to the fact that Jerusalem is like a scar on the face of the earth that never healed. It's been destroyed so many times. It's like a person is picking at a scab. If you keep picking at a scab, so it's never going to heal, right? And so Jerusalem is that scar on the face of the world. Now, what's the point? What's the point of a belly button? So we know that Paro said the famous words like, who's Hashem that I should honor him? Paro thought he was a self-made man. He said, I created myself. And sometimes we all get this ego trip. And part of the ego, I think for the most part, it's the ego that causes us to mess up in all the ways that our Rabbanim here described. And so the belly button really is the ultimate reminder that you didn't create yourself. You were created. Not only were you created, but you were a helpless little infant once upon a time. And it was your mother who carried you for 9 months, 6 to 9 months, whatever it is. And and she took care of you when you were helpless. A wildebeest, after 17 minutes, I believe the stat is, they're able to run and join their mothers on the migration across Africa. After 17 minutes, when a baby is born, they could barely breathe on their own. Yeah, they need to get like slapped upside the head. Yeah, so as human beings, we can become the most powerful creatures in the universe, so to speak, using our ingenuity and our intellect and our mastery over the world that God gave us. But when we're first born, we are the most pathetic creatures in the world. And I think that the belly button and Yerushalayim and the Beis Hamikdash shows us that at one point we were connected and we got all of our nourishment, and we continue to, even though we can't see the physical connection there anymore, get all of our nourishment and get all of our life force from this other world. And when a child is in the womb of its mother, it doesn't know anything about its mother. Its mother is living in a whole different world that the baby can't even fathom, can't even understand, right? And they live in the same realm, but it's as if they live in different worlds entirely, but really they're sharing one place. So too, the Beis Hamikdash is that it's like we don't know what it was, but imagine a child, and we've had cases like this here at Aish, and maybe you've met people like this where their mothers abandoned them, or they were separated from their mothers at birth. My stepfather's mother, her maiden name is Soloveitchik, and she was from the same area where the famous Soloveitchik, the Brisker family, is from, but she was during the war separated from her family. She didn't really grow up with her family. And you can imagine how difficult it must be for a person who was separated from their mother at birth, that they know their mother's out there somewhere. They never met her, so why do they cry themselves to sleep at night, thinking about their mother, wherever she is, and wondering what she's like and how much they miss her and praying that she'll return, right? So we can use that sense of imagination to create a longing for something that does exist. It's not that we never knew what it was, but kilu as if it didn't exist. And just to end off with this last idea, that Jacob refused to be consoled over Joseph, right? Usually when someone loses someone close to them, lo aleinu, there's a time period, 1 day, 7 days, 30 days, a year, so on and so forth, right? Where it gets easier, and God gives us this special heavenly assistance that the memories become numb, so we can move forward and forget. But Jacob refused to be consoled. It doesn't mean he actively refused to be consoled. One way of looking at it is that way, but another way of looking at it is he just couldn't get over it, because when you didn't lose someone, right, so that whole mechanism doesn't kick in of forgetfulness as a gift from Hashem, because they're still there and you're meant to be looking for them. So it might not be in our particular consciousness, but it's in the national consciousness that we refuse to be consoled, because we know that it's still out there somewhere. And it's not like our mother, God forbid, died. God didn't die. But there was a separation that occurred. So that's a few words on that.
One of the big components of Tish'a B'Av is the fasting that comes along with it. And along with that fasting is the hunger, the hankerings, the caffeine headaches. How am I supposed to connect to Tish'a B'Av with the fast, despite the fast? How am I supposed to do it? What about you, Mani?
It's not a surprise that people know that when you eat, you can become numb to things. You ever had that? You go, fast food restaurant, kosher of course, 15 minutes later, you don't know what happened, but you're just sort of like, oh. Like, are you okay, dude? I don't know where I am. It's like, what's going on? Look at your watch, like, the time elapsed, I don't know what happened. Food can be very numbing. And we use food a lot as a numbing mechanism. We hope that people use food in a positive way. But the sages always understood that there's a time and a place for not having food and becoming more sensitized. There's sometimes that a person is going through something that it's so real. You say, like, do you want to eat something? Like, I can't even eat right now. I'm too involved in something. On Yom Kippur, we don't eat because we become angels. So somebody offers you some food on Yom Kippur, the spiritual state that you can get to is you're like, what's a bagel? I don't even know, like, what is that? On Tish'a B'Av, though, if somebody offers you a bagel, you know what a bagel is, but you're just like, I'm too sick. There's so much going on right now. And therefore, it's not easy for us because we use food a lot as a number. Sometimes I'll watch social observations, our generation is always eating, doing, smoking, this, all the time, vaping. It's so much. We use food a lot. So even if it's hard for you, just try to psych yourself up. We're 10 days out. We hope we're not going to fast, by the way. When Mashiach comes, it's going to be the biggest party. We don't want to be fasting. But try to, if God forbid Mashiach doesn't come, then try to psych yourself up and say, I know that I've been using food throughout my life. Sometimes it's something to distract me. For one day, I'm going to refrain from it. It's not going to be easy. I know there's going to be caffeine headaches. I know there's going to be X, Y, and Z. But I want to just be more sensitive for the next 25 hours. And I'm ready to do that. So try to do that.
I want to say that the emphasis on fasting is not correct. We learned from Chazal, our rabbis, and the Talmud, that the emphasis is not the lack of eating, the fasting, but rather it's our actions. Fasting is just a means to get us into the spirit of changing ourselves, rethinking, doing tshuva. But the fast is not the essence, which also means no one should desist from fasting unless they're ill, really ill. But it's not the essence. It's only one day. And maybe it might be said that fasting for a day is even a healthy thing. And it could be said as well that if you eat the right foods, we know that there's a sudat hamafsekes, the last supper, so to speak. If you eat the right foods, which is what? You have to have grape juice, white grape juice.
Oh.
Yeah, white grape juice. Or white grapes, right? The B vitamins will keep you full for 24 hours or more. And I say that's a real thing. It's a real thing. They came up with pills, calcium or whatever. You can buy pills. It's not necessary. Just eat the right way, and one day of fasting will not hurt. On the contrary, it's even viewed as a positive thing. Nothing to be afraid of. We can all do it. B'ezras Hashem. We'll all have an easy time. And at best, it should help us focus on something other than food, which is what Rabbi Eade so nicely said. And we can fast and accomplish a lot on this day. And Chazal don't say, that our rabbis don't say that Tish'a B'Av is the happiest day of the year, unlike Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is a happy day. You get atonement. But if we use the day the right way and relate to it, it's a real growth experience, personally and nationally. It can be very, very good. So let's not be afraid of the fasting and the caffeine headaches, shtuyot, nonsense. Just eat the right things in advance and go right through it. And you should never be bothered by fasting for the rest of your life. Let's look forward to fast. We don't want to fast. We want to celebrate. We're told by the prophets that when things get better, when there is a Beis Hamikdash, when the Jewish people have embraced the Almighty again, as we should, then we'll be celebrating. But in the meantime, spending Tish'a B'Av in Aish Torah, air-conditioned building, we start davening 10 minutes of 9 in the morning. Oh, wow. Okay. We don't even finish what we want to do. It's such a positive day. It's a chance for real growth. All the keynotes that we say, all those keynote addresses, it's really very uplifting. So don't be afraid of the fast.
Okay, I want to focus on the caffeine headache part of the. No, it's really it's an important piece of the puzzle, and I think that it highlights something really important. I myself, there's a famous line from a comedian that I was fond of back in the day, Mitch Hedberg. He used to say, "I used to do drugs, I still do, but I used to too." right? Think about it. There you go. Somebody got it. The point is that coffee is a drug, right? And whether we like to admit it or not, anything that we become reliant upon for our performance or for a state of mind is a drug. And from a Jewish perspective, that's less than ideal. Now, I myself am guilty of not only drinking coffee on a daily basis usually, but also enjoying it. And all of a sudden we uplift it into like an art form, and now there's gourmet coffee, and we can become like coffee connoisseurs, right? And the same could be said for many other drugs that are out there that are also legal nowadays, right? So the point is as follows. This is just a personal piece of advice. If you're looking for practical advice, this is something that I developed a couple of years ago, and it's helped me out with that. And that is from 17th of Tammuz until Yom Kippur, I try desperately to quit coffee. And then I see how long I could go after Yom Kippur as well. Just to be honest, usually by like the second day of Chol Hamoed Sukkos, I'm back at it, you know? But why do I say this? This is water, by the way. I didn't know they were going to provide, the goods here. But anyway, the point is that think about how dependent on the physical world you are. Think about how much time and effort you spend on shopping for clothes, picking out clothes, laundering clothes, wearing clothing. Think about how much time you spend on getting the best restaurants, going to them, sitting at them, schmoozing at them, eating at them, digesting it, like Rabbi Eade so accurately pointed out, right? Think about how much time you spend, if you ever lived on your own, shopping for food, cooking, right? How much time do we spend involved in all of these things that are only supposed to be facilitating a spiritual experience, right? So it's funny, on a fast day, especially if you're a student in Yeshiva, so what usually happens after Shacharis, right? You go downstairs, you have your breakfast, you schmooze for a little bit. It's always like, oh my goodness, it's time for Seder already. It like sneaks up on you every time, seemingly, right? When you're at breakfast, and then all of a sudden you like run there 5-10 minutes late, half an hour late, whatever the case is, right? And all of a sudden like, oh, then it's time for a coffee break, this and that. On a fast day, I remember being shocked. Like, we're done with Shacharis, not on Tish'a B'Av because there's a whole program, but on one of the minor fasts, and all of a sudden it's like, what do I do now? I have no excuses anymore. There's nothing to prepare. There's nothing to do other than to daven a little bit more, to learn something else different, right? Masha li b'chafetz, whatever my heart desires, right? And so that's just the ultimate sign that true growth occurs when you realize that you're not dependent on the physical world as much as you think you are, which the fast will highlight for you, right? How dependent you are and how it is okay and healthy to cease from time to time. And the fact that you have so much more time at your disposal. People literally say, oh, how can I, people say to me, I'm leaving Aish, I won't have time to learn. So like, what do? You won't have time to learn, right? Like, if you log and make a actual, cheshbon, accounting, yeah, of your day, how much time you spend here, try it out. You'll see how much of it revolves around food, to say the least, as well as everything else, right? So the pain on the fast day is a good sign. It reminds us about how dependent we became, and it hopefully will inspire us to be less and less dependent on the things that we actually don't need, and to hopefully use the world as the physical world as a tool, the way it's meant to be used.
Just to end off with one last question, and then if we have some time, we'll take a couple questions. But what is your most impactful and touching memory from all of your Tish'a B'Av experiences? Rabbi Gil, would you like to start?
In a nutshell, I remember from a young age sitting on the floor after Mariv, after the evening service, and somebody saying, let's go through the Gemara of Kamsa Ubar Kamsa. I remember from maybe I was 8 years old or 7, something like that. I could barely follow along. And that was very, very impactful to read about the Churban, about the destruction of Yerushalayim, of the very populated areas of Tur Malka, Beitar, millions of people killed, millions. It was like a Holocaust for a good period of time. And just hearing about it, and going through the Gemara, seeing that it's not just history It's something a person can learn and grow from. That was my most, and that still is my most impactful element of Tish'a B'Av.
Just a shameless little plug, Rabbi Gil will be giving a shir after Kinos on the Tish'a B'Av night of the Gemaras of Tish'a B'Av, so you can experience it yourself.
There's many tzaddikim in the Jewish people. Tzaddikim are exceptionally righteous people that have been our guides for thousands of years. So I remember the first time I went to one particular tzaddik, Rav Tzvi Meyer in Zuberberg. He lives here in Yerushalayim. And I went there we had finished davening in Aish, and I thought to daven mincha. It was like, it was time for mincha gedola. 1:30 or something, and I went there to daven, and everyone was still on the floor, wailing. I saw a human being, a grown human being, unconsolable, it was all dark, everyone on the floor, just wailing, screaming. And I was so moved by it. I was so taken that there was just so much raw emotion. As if somebody was like Meis Muta Lefan of Mamish, like somebody right there, Lo Aleinu, had passed away on the floor. And just the realness struck me very, very strong. And it stayed with me ever since. And I'll give you one point to think about, that we have a tradition that Napoleon, on one of his conquests, he was going and he found a Jewish community, and he saw that there was a synagogue, and he saw that Jews were in the synagogue, and he sent one of his officers in to see what was going on. And they said they're all on the floor crying. He said, go find out why. And they said, because their temple was destroyed. So Napoleon said, I'm the ruler of the world. I don't know of any temple in Yerushalayim. I don't know of such a temple. Go find out, what temple is this? And they went back and they said, yeah, the temple was destroyed 1,600 years ago. And Napoleon said, any people that's still crying over their temple 1,600 years later, now 2,000 years later, will certainly be meritorious to have it rebuilt once again. So that moment of encountering just real, raw emotion was a very impactful moment for me.
I have a story from last year, actually. It was very impactful for me as well. So last year we come out of Mariv, out of the evening prayers, like during the regular days of the week in the beginning of the summer. And there was this boy called Sam, and Sam just happened to be in the neighborhood. He was studying in a nearby university, and he was just sitting there outside of the shul and just watching us as we were lining out of Mariv, out of the evening prayers. And one of my friends came up to him, one of the members of the community came up to him and said, hey, what are you doing here? Can I help you? Are you looking for something? He's like, yeah, I'm Jewish, and I just want to be involved somehow. What were you guys just doing? This guy knew close to nothing about Jewish practice. So he explained to him, every evening we get together, there's several times in this neighborhood if you want. He showed him the schedule, he showed him the shul, he showed him the siddur, he showed him Mariv. We're going to be doing it tomorrow night too. You can join us, And so slowly but surely, this guy Sam started coming to synagogue with us and praying. We were taking turns, showing him the siddur. And eventually it was time for Tish'a B'Av. So we told him, tomorrow's going to be different than any other day. You're going to see, tomorrow we're not going to be in this shul, our community of the people that were helping him. We're going to be in Rav Elbaz's shul. Okay? Rabbi Elbaz teaches here in the afternoons. He's one of the poskim here, the main posek here, right under the Rosh Yeshiva. And so we're going to be by his shul. Come over there. It's in this park, in this gan. Okay. So I just remember the moment where he showed up to the morning services, and just like Rabbi Eade, he was shocked. People were crying. It's kind of interesting. I'm happy to say people were crying. It's a strange thing to say, but when you cry, it shows that you're still human and you're still in touch with your emotions, and that's a good thing, right? If you can't cry, that means a part of your humanity has been snuffed out, right? Some people can't cry at all. It's a defense mechanism. It's from PTSD, whatever the case is, right? But when we can cry for something that deserves it, that's a good sign. So he walks in and he sees all of us crying, and he was so confused. And so I ran home, I got him an English keynotes, and he sat in the back the entire day for hours, 5, 6 hours, just sitting there, reading, soaking it up, didn't say a word for all that time. Happened, I don't know if he was fasting or not, but he was certainly fasting that entire time. And afterwards, he came for Mariv, and afterwards, he came for the break fast, and he told us that was the most amazing day of his life ever. He only met Jews that Judaism to them was very superficial. And when he saw that people care so much about their Judaism, he turned his whole life around. As a result of that Tish'a B'Av, he went to Or Sameach, he studied there. It was local, it was nearby, it's a good place, good people. Invited him to come there, and he did, and he shtayed like crazy. And now he's really a budding Torah scholar. This was already 1 calendar year away, and he's balancing learning with working and his studies. And so that was really special. By the way, just I have to add, just because it's Aish, and I think we're finishing it right now, and maybe asking a few questions. So the 7 Tish'a B'Avs that I spent here at Aish, 3 as a bacher and 4 as an avreich, were the most powerful ones for me personally. Not as a spectator of someone else having a powerful experience, but they would ask us to speak constantly. All the students from different international communities would speak. We learned about how sad the state of affairs are in Jewish communities all around the world. That when students come here, they realize how bad it is back there. When they're there, they think like, this is great, look what we have. And when they come here, they realize, wow, people there are so lost, right? And they speak about that, and they just break down crying. We had converts to Judaism who spoke frequently, it seems. It seems like a frequent thing that converts would speak that came to Aish, who converted previously, and they spoke about what it is about the Jewish people that brought them, even though the last thing they tell a convert before they go into the mikveh is, you know that when you become a Jew, you're going to be hated and sought after and potentially killed just for being part of the Jewish people. Why would you do this to yourself? This is your last chance. Turn back now. And the thoughts that were going through their minds, and they said, it's worth it for me. I want to be part of the rebuilding of this people. It's so powerful. And last but not least, the closest students to Rabbi Noah Weinberg of blessed memory, Rabbi Eric Coopersmith and his son, the former Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Hillel Weinberg, when they would speak on Tish'a B'Av, they always had tears and holding back, this frog in their throat, talking about, most importantly, that every single one of us is obligated to do the job. And like Rabbi Eade started off with, any generation that doesn't rebuild it, it's really their fault that it was destroyed. And he said that's not true for 70% of the Jewish people. And even the other 30% that are somewhat openly affiliated, how many of them are doing it out of rote? You people, you don't realize it, but this is an upside down world that we live in. You are the cream of the crop in a certain sense. You are the people that are actively choosing spirituality and Judaism. For you, Judaism is more real than it is for the average person who's the son of a rabbi, son of a rabbi, son of a rabbi, who when you ask him on the street, why do you think there's a God? He'll tell you, oh, I don't know. I mean, some answer, right? But you guys are like in it to win it. And like really, the responsibility falls on you. And hearing that year after year after year is what ultimately made me change my trajectory from going out into business and just having a nice house and sending my kids to yeshiva and earning a lot of money and maybe, having some people over for Shabbos and I'll be Yotzi, the mitzvah of, outreach, to changing my trajectory and saying, you know what, I think I'm going to dedicate my life to helping Jewish people. So,
we have time for just one question.
If for someone who's doing Tish'a B'Av for the very first time, what are the things you'd recommend, like the main things to focus on and also the main thing to read?
I think the first main thing is just be in the yeshiva. Just be around the whole feeling of the yeshiva. If you could speak also, somebody, it's a very moving thing. Just the yeshiva oftentimes will give out a certain kinna to review, to go over. They'll give somebody a small section. Learn that little piece. Try to own that. Learn up the historical background of it, what it means to you. It's very powerful when all the lights are dimmed and you're trying to share something from your heart with other people. it pulls you into it. So even though it seems like it's my first one, like why should I speak? If you're here and you're in it, share some words. Reading the kinnis, just the kinnis themselves, and also just think like we began with, of all the sad, messed up things in the world, all the broken relationships, all the anxiety, all the challenges that people are going through, everything, all the bad marriages and divorces, Hashem Yirachim, all of it is all because we haven't fixed what we need to fix. So that shouldn't take too much arousal to get to a point of we need to fix something. We need to fix something. And then all of that will go away. All of it. So not even reading so much, just thinking about the pains in this world.
The day at Aish Torah of Tish'a B'Av is very varied. It has in it elements which can motivate, can inspire different kinds of people. There are starting with the movies, the videos. They're very inspiring. The speaker, the last few years we've had Mr. Lefkowitz, a 94-year-old Holocaust survivor, speaking about his experiences. Very, very powerful. The davening, it's just the whole atmosphere. We're not wearing tefillin in the morning. We're not wearing talitot. And the davening is it's longer, but nobody's looking at the time, really. We never finish on time. The fast doesn't go longer, but we're by chatzos, by the middle of the day, you're supposed to. It's already, you can sit on chairs. We're really hardly ready. We haven't done this, haven't done that. The readings from the Torah, the kinos, looking into them, the Gemaras that I mentioned. These are all very, very inspiring, and they appeal to different people. And I would recommend that everyone try to get as much as they can out of the day. It's a day potentially of great growth and much introspective thinking and uniting with the Jewish people and with our destiny. It's a very, very powerful day. And I wouldn't point to one thing in particular because everyone has their own thing, but the totality of the whole experience, Tish'a B'Av, is very, very special.
Okay, just to sum up, you asked a good question. What can we do to motivate ourselves? Anything particular to read or to watch or whatever the case is. So number one, to bear in mind that every chag, every festival, every moed, and Tish'a B'Av is called a moed, has like a mitzvah item, right? And that for Tish'a B'Av is the tier, right? The tier of the Jewish people. So it's a funny thing to say, but like I said, to remind yourself of your own humanity and to get in touch with your inner feelings, to try to get yourself to feel again, and that will naturally, hopefully, end up in a real cathartic cry. There's two ways to cry. One way is to cry away from what you're afraid of, right? To like run away, to cry as I'm scared of running away from it. Another way is to cry to cry in the right way, to cry with someone, right? That we're sharing an experience together. What you have to realize is that Hashem is present in the consciousness of every single human being ever since the beginning of time. And every single trouble and pain and ache and anguish that anyone has ever felt, Hashem has felt that too. And so to stir up these a deep understanding of what it was like to suffer for so many years in so many ways, whatever that means to you. For us, what I do sometimes on Tish'a B'Av is I read stories from those who were jailed in Siberia, who endured tremendous suffering just because they were Jewish, and how they tried to hold on to Torah and mitzvahs there, and the death and the loss that occurred for them. So for some people it's the Holocaust, for some people it could be the Inquisition, right? For others who are much more abstract, it could be the actual destruction of the temple in Jerusalem and all the death and destruction that occurred there, but not intellectually, like to get into the nitty-gritty and use the power of that imagination that we use throughout the year for things that might not be so holy, to elevate the power of imagination and to really just take some time and imagine yourself in these scenarios and realize the root of it all is because we don't have geula, we don't have the redemption.
Okay, thank you very much to Rabbi Dubov, Rabbi Eisenbach, and Rabbi Eade. Fantastic.